Not every wrestling promo goes to plan, but one person's plan might be completely different to another's.
I remember thinking, that was a pretty good, my first night on Raw. All right, I'm kind of like, strutting up the ramp, and I walked through the curtain, and I came through, and it was like, Vince goes, that was the worst fucking promo I've ever heard in my life.
Botches and lack of crowd reaction is always a risk.
So he wrote me this promo. So I go down to the ring, and I stand at this podium. The whole arena goes quiet, the camera's on me. And I read out this prepared statement of bad news.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
Zero reaction.
The content of the promo might even tick off the higher-ups, or the wrestlers, or the individual delivering the scripted lines.
I had a bit of an outburst backstage.
What caused that reaction?
An F-bomb being dropped in the ring.
The business!
There's really no room for those on our show.
We'll have examples of all these and more today, as we highlight talking segments that annoyed, upset, and angered talent.
The next day at SmackDown, I heard most of the imitated talent were not as pleased. In fact, I believe the words of The Rock were, "Great promo last night. By the way, the boys are fucking pissed."
Today, we look at WWE promos that piss wrestlers off.
He said something that pissed off Paul about something with him and Stephanie, and it wasn't on script, and it pissed Paul off. And Paul came back and basically said, "You're not wrestling Punk, I am. I'm beating that motherfucker."
After coming in hot at the start of 2018, former UFC star Ronda Rousey wasn't happy with her lackluster creative by the end of the year. She wanted to turn heel after being booed out of the building in her hometown of LA at Survivor Series.
Sympathetic Los Angeles crowd.
WWE kept her face though, while making her cut scripted promos with unnatural dialogue.
I'm sure most of you guys know that last week.
This came to a head on the January 28, 2019 Raw, when Ronda cut a woefully botched promo before her open challenge match with Bayley. The fans booed Ronda to shreds. In her audiobook, Ronda described being given the script for her segment right before showtime.
The writer handed me another page of dialogue. "That's it?" I asked, somewhere between sarcastic and incredulous. Doors had already opened, and fans were filing into seats. There was no way we could rehearse any of this in the ring. Yeah, I think so, unless, of course, Vince has any changes. I looked over the huge blocks of text that I was expected to be able to effortlessly recite in a matter of hours. There was no way I'd be able to memorize all of it, plus a match that we hadn't even come up with yet. Back in my dressing room, a writer knocked on my door. "Just a couple of changes to the script," she said, handing it to me. I looked at the new lines highlighted in yellow. "Do I really have to open with this?" I asked. "It just doesn't fit the situation. Please, don't make me say this." The writer shrugged. "It's beyond my control."
The baddest woman on the planet clearly wasn't feeling the material, as she woodenly recited each line.
Before I'd even got out the first lines of dialogue, the crowd erupted in boos until I lowered my mic. "What's the use of dreaming at all?"
The crowd continued to jeer, while all Ronda could do was laugh, visibly breaking character.
Every time I opened my mouth to speak, they booed again. Guess I should have spent that time memorizing the match instead of this cringeworthy promo.
The boos soon got Ronda to stumble, which she acknowledged.
I think Sasha made me get better today than she was just... Alright, you got me to stutter, good job.
Not bothered to finish regurgitating any of the scripted speak, Ronda began stalling and playing with the crowd, waiting for her opponent Bayley to interrupt.
After an eternity of embarrassment on the level of a naked in class nightmare, Bayley's music hit and she came running out.
Frustrated with her build to WrestleMania 35, Rousey said she was counting days until she could finish up, following the show of shows.
I started to count the days until I could leave. I still had to wait another month for my heel turn. When Triple H asked me to commit from one WrestleMania to the next, his reasoning had been that the WWE builds storylines and rivalries from one Mania to the next. But the longer I spent in WWE, the idea that there was any kind of planning and forethought when it came to best utilizing talent was as rooted in reality as 90-pound Alexa Bliss being able to hold her own against me in an actual fight.
Unlike with Ronda, Vince McMahon didn't take long to make changes with our next example after things went wrong. To set the scene, Vince was high on the Bad News Barrett character after seeing how well it worked on the JBL and Cold YouTube show. Barrett wasn't sure how the persona could adapt to the main shows, since all he did was go around delivering bad news to people. McMahon had an idea though, and wrote out an extra cheap heat-littered promo for Barrett to cut on the December 2nd, 2013 Raw. The segment drew crickets though, which Barrett spoke about during an Inside the Ropes live show.
So he wrote me this promo, and it was like, okay, on Raw tonight, you're going to go down there, we're going to have a little podium next to Michael Cole where he's doing his announcing. We want you to stand there in a suit or something and just give out bad news. So, man, this is rotten. No one's going to like this. But it's Vince, so I'm not going to tell him that, so I go and do it. So I go down to the ring, and I stand at this podium. The whole arena goes quiet, the camera's on me, and I read out this prepared statement of bad news.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news. This past Thursday, you Americans celebrated Thanksgiving. You ate turkey, gravy, stuffing, and pumpkin pie. As a result, your arteries are now clogged. You sweat when you eat. And you are all constipated. Thank you.
Zero reaction. And it's so quiet in this huge arena, there's 10 or 15,000 people in there, that I hear a guy 3 seats away just yell, "Are we supposed to be laughing at this?" And then I just left, and that was the end of my segment. And it was, a humiliating moment. So I got at the back, and wow, that was bad. And I saw Regal in the back, and he had the look of death. He said, "I don't envy you that one." I said, "Oh God, this ain't good."
Following the poor first promo, a dejected Barrett knew he had to switch things up, so he went to Vince.
So I go to speak to Vince, like, "Vince, we need to jazz this up a bit." He said, yeah. So I said, "I want to use a gavel, I want to bang it when the crowd are making noise." Not that they were making noise, but I was going to bang the gavel, and I told it to Vince, like, yeah, give it a try. So we tried that. Still wasn't quite there. So then I went home that week, and I was trying to think of new things I could do. I was like, wow, how can I make this work? So I wanted to do this thing where I would come up through the stage on my podium, gavel, give my bad news, laugh, and then disappear under the stage again. I thought, this is so ridiculous, I've got to amp it up more, let me be like Dr. Evil kind of thing. What do you think about that, Vince? And he goes, I hope you're not afraid of heights.
Barrett's subsequent appearances continued to improve as he began using a gavel and scissor lift podium to deliver his bad news promos. This worked well and eventually resulted in babyface reactions.
That podium is what really helped that character become a spectacle. It went from being just a guy talking and giving out this nonsense bad news to, hey, there's that guy with the podium, oh, it's coming up, and they're playing music as I'm going up, and it went from being, okay, now that's showbiz. Something like that, a spectacle, showbiz spectacle, and that's what works. And that made Bad News Barrett right there and then, once I got my extended podium.
However, McMahon refused to turn Barrett, which was ultimately the death of the popular Bad News character. Barrett was eventually downgraded to a King character that lost most matches and was constantly made to look silly. Being the butt of a joke was something that outraged 4 different wrestlers in our next entry. We're talking about The Rock's famous promo from the December 4, 2000 Raw. The skit is iconic in that it's considered to be one of Rock's funniest ever segments. The People's Champion ran down and impersonated each of his opponents in the upcoming Armageddon Hell in a Cell match for the WWF title.
I'm gonna drink a big glass of milk, eat some chocolate chip cookies, and then maybe I'll take 3 Viagra.
I did it for The Rock. I did it for the people.
Shut your mouth, you thong-wearing fatty. I gotta get in my pickup truck, drink some Steve Weisers, listen to some Backstreet Boys. Which means he's gotta beat the game in the middle of the ring. And he has a $2 slut for a wife. Rest in peace.
Given the serious nature of the Cell concept and the stakes on the line, all of Rock's opponents besides Kurt Angle were none too pleased with the Great One making a joke of things. The Brahma Bull was in full comedy mode by this point in his career, but the other wrestlers in the match felt he should have sold the seriousness of the stipulation at hand. Rock's longtime writer Brian Gewirtz explained the backlash in his audiobook.
However, the next day at SmackDown, I heard most of the imitated talent were not as pleased. In fact, I believe the words of The Rock were, "Great promo last night. By the way, the boys are fucking pissed." Officially, I heard that their issue was Rock didn't put over the severity of the Hell in the Cell structure enough. The reality was that despite their approval, the boys didn't like the way they were made fun of. Trying to see their side, I get it. Kind of. These are top money-drawing talents busting their asses trying to sell a main event, and Rock's turning it all into comedy. Technically speaking, if you watch the entire promo, Rock does begin and end on a serious note, selling the severity of the Cell. It's just not the part people were talking about afterward.
This wasn't the only promo Rock and Gewirtz wrote that upset talent. A month prior to the Hell in a Cell impression skit, the Great One made fun of Perry Saturn and his lazy eye on the November 13, 2000 Raw.
And now on to you, Perry Saturn. The Rock's gift to you. The Rock knows that you've got one eye that goes that way and another eye that goes that way. And the Rock is just hoping for one single solitary second that the eye that's going that way is looking at the Rock's hand going that way, so the Rock will slap that crooked eye straight.
Perry wasn't happy with the line, and Brian believes this might be the reason Saturn spoke up against Goertz when the writer was in wrestler's court the next year.
Perry Saturn, who in the past was not happy when he heard I supplied The Rock with a joke about his crossed eyes, was called on next. I've been in the company for 427 days, and he said hello 236 of those days, but only shook my hand 139 of those days, and one time he went into a room and didn't shake my hand or nothing even. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the idea.
After The Rock returned to WWE in 2024, he was dropping F-bombs left, right, and center.
Have him talk about our family again. Slap his teeth out of his mouth.
However, he was typically the only one that was allowed to do so, save for a few select examples.
Chant it now! Chant the shut the f*** up now! You piece of the trash!
A year after Rock was gone, Pat McAfee came back to accompany Randy Orton in the Vipers feud with WWE champion CODY Rhodes. Pat's promos were full of swearing, including a specific F-bomb from the April 3rd, 2026 SmackDown that caused Cody to go mad backstage.
And he is gonna save the business!
Rhodes explained his fit of rage on the Ariel Helwani show.
I had a bit of an outburst backstage, which shockingly didn't get reported because it seems like everything gets reported. And I knew right when I got to my bus, and when I say outburst, it's just like me muttering some curse words like yelling and, knocking over some water bottle, nothing too intense. But I remember getting to my bus and thinking, yeah, you outgrew that. I don't need to be having temper tantrums. I need to be helping provide solutions.
What caused that reaction?
An F-bomb being dropped in the ring, because I am genuinely a goody two-shoes, whether people like to believe it or not. And there's really no room for those on our show because we get blacked out. Not only do you think you're saying something cool, but they black the feed out in the States, so you're missing the show. And we got kiddos in the crowd. Their first experience with the F word does not need to come at a WWE show.
Cody didn't mention McAfee by name, but the former NFL star is a safe bet, given the American Nightmare's telling of events. F-bombs were a no-no during Vince McMahon's regime. However, Vince was also known for making up strange new rules, depending on how he felt at the time. On his Mic Check with Ken Anderson podcast, Mr. Kennedy describes when he broke one of Vince's new edicts on the June 18, 2007 Raw.
Vince had just that week said, I don't want you guys acknowledging the crowd anymore. He was like, I want you to pretend like they're not even there, which goes against all of your training, all of your experiences, whatever. And so I went out there and they started doing the what thing. And I was like, don't start with that what crap, which makes them do it more.
Kennedy had just been drafted to the Red Brand and fired back at the what chants during his promo, much to McMahon's dismay.
My finances to my personal life at home. Don't start that crap. For people that grab that brass ring and don't wait.
Kennedy had to face the wrath of Vince once he got back through the curtain. There, the boss completely buried the promo.
I remember thinking that was my first night on Raw. All right, I'm kind of like, strutting up the ramp, and I walked through the curtain. And when you've done well, man, you come through that curtain, people are like giving you the thumbs up, pat on the back. When it's not gone well, everybody's like, and I came through and it was like that. And I was like, oh, no. Yeah. And Vince goes, that was the worst fucking promo I've ever heard in my life. I was like, what didn't you like about it? You're out there chewing your fucking gum. and you knew damn well when you said, when you told them to shut up, that they were going to come harder. And I was like, yes, I did. Like, I'm sorry. That was what, in the moment, that's what I thought. And he goes, well, you need to think differently, pal. He goes, your first night on Raw, you shit the bed.
This wasn't an isolated incident, as McMahon was constantly on Ken, believing him to be too hokey. It was similar to Barrett earlier, whereby Vince's ultimate vision conflicted with what the fans were reacting to.
It was super frustrating at the time, because I was trying to figure out, he was doing that to me a lot. And he was always like, you're too over the top. You're too, and basically like all the stuff that got me to the dance in the first place, he was now telling me not to do that. And I just could not wrap my wrap my head around it.
The chairman wanted Kennedy to tone it down and be more serious. Ken was inspired by The Rock, but Vince once told Kennedy that Rock being so funny was restrictive, since the audience began expecting comedy from the Great One every time, to where the comedy are the only parts people remember about Rock. As we saw earlier in the video,
it was kind of like boot camp. You know, they break you down so that they can build you up in their own image.
Chris Jericho is another who frequently did comedy, especially when it came to roasting his rivals. On occasion, this landed him in hot water, like when he tore into the returning X-Pac on the February 15, 2001 SmackDown. Jericho said what many fans were thinking at the time, as X-Pac finally changed his presentation after continuing to dress in DX gear, despite the group having split up months ago.
X-Pac, I've got to hand it to you. In your 4-month absence from the World Wrestling Federation, you have really changed. You've gone from being a greasy-haired, cheesy bandana-wearing jerky in black and green tights to becoming a greasy-haired, cheesy bandana-wearing jerky in black and red tights.
Chris had previously racked on X-Pac for not changing his appearance during their feud in 2000.
X-Pac, we have been wrestling each other for such a long time. You know, I don't even remember why I hate you so much. I mean, maybe it's your greasy hair. Maybe it's your outdated crotch chop. Maybe it's your brutal kind of come-see-come-saw ring wear.
But it was the comments in 01 that got Y2J in trouble. This was at a time when X-Pac's buddy Triple H had heavily increased his political profile within the company.
Some of the mid-carders believe that their biggest allies among the top guys are Austin and Undertaker. I think there is definite leeriness of Triple H, more now than ever before, by the obvious people, for the obvious reasons, especially since Chris Jericho got yelled at for cutting a promo on X-Pac that everyone thought was something that he shouldn't have been yelled at for. So,
what did he say? Oh, the same look, same everything?
Yeah, that one.
Well, it's true.
I know. Well, that's probably why. If it wasn't true, I think that everyone would have a sense of humor about it.
2 decades later, Triple H was retired from the ring, and now the head of creative in WWE. Despite being in charge of all things on the show, there was one controversial moment he didn't know about, which upset him. That's because it took place on the WrestleMania 41 recap podcast, where Karrion Kross cut a work-shoot promo, venting his creative frustrations with the company.
So I decided to be a good soldier. You know what happened? They released me.
Because it didn't take place on the main shows, it was believable that this wasn't meant to happen.
Everybody's been telling me that I gotta become undeniable. And as soon as it happens, they ignore it and they shut it down.
Especially since it appeared to fool some of the suits backstage.
And the crowd told you exactly how they felt about me on SmackDown when I was eliminated, and you ignored it.
It had been agreed that Karrion would do this pseudo-shoot promo ahead of time, but because it was on social media, Triple H and other key personnel weren't aware.
They leaked my fucking contract information online. I have no privacy, nothing.
In fact, the game wasn't clued into its validity until days after the segment had aired.
You want a viral moment? Guy with the suit and tie in the truck, go fuck yourself. That's from Killer Kross. No, fuck it.
Once his WWE contract expired 4 months later, Kross publicly revealed the truth about the promo on the Ariel Helwani show.
Everyone was really blown away, and I let everybody know, let's make sure this is somewhat protected from the audience, but let everyone know internally that this is a work, because not every department is constantly in lockstep communication with one another. So I told everybody that. Sure enough, not everybody knew that that was a work.
You think it backfired?
Well, I can't say that it backfired, but people were very upset with it because they thought it was real.
When you say people, specifically like...
Higher-ups. I'll say higher-ups. So a lot of everything that you see goes through the creative process. It goes through a team. I was under the impression that we were doing something improvisationally and it was okay. But like I said, sometimes the communication is not in lockstep with each other. So no one told them that this was a work. One day I waited for Hunter outside the production meeting. Once it was actually brought to my attention that he was not okay with it, and I explained everything to him. No one told him anything. So as far as I know, at that point we were good, but everyone was under the impression, a lot of people, like I just lost my mind. I was just trying to do my job. My job that day was to make people believe, like any other day.
Triple H is involved yet again in our final example. This time round, he was so furious about a promo, he completely changed the storyline just to get his own back. We're referring to the Summer of Punk being derailed in 2011, whereby the red hot CM Punk was cooled after losing the WWE Championship and being inserted in a feud with Triple H and his big buddy Kevin Nash. Punk was due to wrestle Nash at the Night of Champions event after Big Sexy cost him the title at SummerSlam. However, Punk's comments to Hunter's wife Stephanie McMahon in a backstage segment earlier in the night forced a change.
Good luck.
I would, but I know where that hand's been.
It would now be the game wrestling Punk at the next pay-per-view, with Kevin doing a run-in. Big Sexy had previously said he was on blood thinners, which was the reason they changed it from him versus Punk to Hunter versus Punk. But now with so much time having passed, it looks like Nash was happy to reveal the true reason. He told all on his Click This podcast.
When I was supposed to wrestle CM Punk, after I cost him the belt, he said something that pissed off Paul about something with him and Stephanie, and it wasn't on script, and it pissed Paul off. And Paul came back and basically said, "You're not wrestling Punk, I am. I'm beating that motherfucker." Like, he was that hot. So I know how hot fucking, and it wasn't like, Paul isn't a bitch. It was like, "Oh, okay, motherfucker." Basically like, "Oh, okay, Click rules. You want to pull him out and measure him? Here we go. Suck on that."
Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our similar video on wrestling pranks so bad they should have been illegal. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.